Just a quick note before we get started. I wanted to shout out my Patreon and my Discord because at some point I'd like to go full-time with YouTube. I don't know when exactly, but I'd like it to be an option. And I want to be in a comfortable spot before I do. I don't want to worry as much about whether or not I'll be able to pay rent. So it's something to think about. If you guys want to support my channel and me while I hold the Watchtower Society and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and so many others accountable, joining Patreon is a good way to do it. And as a side note, why the f*** is their name so long? Couldn't they have chosen shorter names? So I was going through the God's Love book by Jehovah's Witnesses again. This thing is full of good material, and I came across a few choice chapters, one of which is on holidays. They give their reasons for not celebrating holidays of various sorts. So let's go through it and see what flimsy reasons they give for not celebrating Christmas. Let's get into it. So this is chapter 13 of the God's Love book by Jehovah's Witnesses. It's called Celebrations That Displease God. But remember, they use God, the organization, and the governing body interchangeably. So let's see what the governing body thinks about holidays. Here's the second paragraph in the chapter. Consider what occurred near Mount Sinai when the Israelites asked Aaron to make them a god. Aaron acquiesced and made a golden calf, but implied that it represented Jehovah. There is a festival to Jehovah tomorrow, he said. Was Jehovah indifferent to this fusion of true religion with false? No, he had about 3,000 idolaters put to death. The lesson? If we want to keep ourselves in God's love, we must touch nothing unclean, and jealously guard the truth against any form of corruption. Jesus! That's a little over the top, isn't it? He killed 3,000 people over that? Here's my question. Why isn't he running around killing people now? A ton of people celebrate holidays. Lots even worship idols. So why is it different now than it was then? Why was God's hand so active then, but so non-existent now that nobody can tell if he's real or not? If God came down and killed 3,000 people openly like that for worshiping an idol, absolutely nobody would be able to deny what happened. Where'd he go? Okay, I'm off my soapbox. I'm just saying it's a little convenient to have all these crazy miracles 5,000 years ago when nobody could explain what was actually happening, and people from that time have a reputation for making up explanations that have no basis in reality, like saying the earth is round when it's obviously flat. No, I'm just joking. But they did make things up back then to explain things they didn't understand. I just don't see how people today manage to suppress their doubts so thoroughly. Okay, let's continue on with the book. So the question for paragraph 2 was, explain how Jehovah views those who try to fuse true religion with false. If this was being read out at a meeting or something, I'd expect somebody to give an answer straight from the paragraph. Something like, he views the worship of false idols with great disdain. He even went as far as to kill 3,000 people for worshiping the golden calf. So we have to be very careful about what we do today to make sure we aren't displeasing Jehovah. Something like that. I don't know, why don't you guys put the answer you would have given at the meeting in the comments section? Okay, the next subheading is called Christmas, Sun Worship Renamed. I've talked about the whole Christmas thing before in a video, so if you want to see my in-depth analysis of whether or not their reasoning is complete BS, then check that out. Spoiler alert, it is. I'll give a flyover explanation here. Let's read the paragraph. It says, the Bible makes no mention of a birthday celebration for Jesus. In fact, his exact birth date is unknown. We can be sure, though, that he was not born on December 25th in the cold of winter in that part of the world. Footnote, based on biblical reckoning and secular history, Jesus was likely born in 2 BCE, in the Jewish month of Ethanim. I know I butchered that, please forgive me. Which corresponds to September-October on our present calendar. For one thing, Luke recorded that when Jesus was born, shepherds were living out of doors, minding their flocks. Okay, let's dissect that. First, I want to point out that nobody has any idea when Jesus was born, or if he was even a real person. Somebody mentioned that in my comments recently, that everybody believes Jesus was real. That's not exactly accurate. The most cited evidence for Jesus' existence are the Josephus writings, but as it turns out, a lot of them were forgeries. Here's my hang-up with it. Let's just take a look at the Bible in context. So the Jews originally wrote up this whole prophecy about the Messiah and how they'd be able to identify him. They gave a list of criteria. One of the criteria he had to meet to be the Messiah was he had to be a descendant of King David. And when the New Testament authors were writing about Jesus, they looked in the Old texts to find that he was supposed to be born of a virgin. Except the word didn't translate to virgin, it translated to young woman. The New Testament writers mistranslated the Old Testament. So if Jesus was supposed to be born of a virgin, how could he have possibly come from the line of King David? The only way it could be possible is if Mary, his mother, was from that line, because supposedly he didn't have a father from earth. So there would be no DNA from King David's line in him, unless it came from Mary. So let's just take a look at Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Jesus, trying to establish his lineage as coming from the line of King David. It starts out in verse 1 saying, "This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob." And it keeps going from there. Here's verse 15 and 16. "Elihud, the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Mathan, Mathan the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. And Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah." So due to a mistranslation, they mistakenly thought Mary had to be a virgin. All through the New Testament, you can see them trying to reinforce that idea. But what was Joseph's relation to him? There was none. She was supposedly a virgin, so he wasn't from the line of King David at all. Not even a little bit. What about some of the other questionable things? It said he had to have been born in Bethlehem because according to Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, his parents were on their way back to their birthplace for a Roman census. It says, "Now in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be enrolled. This was the first enrollment made when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to enroll themselves, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, to David's city, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, to enroll himself with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him as his wife, being pregnant." It feels like they're trying a little hard here. They had to put Jesus in that time and in that place for it to work. If he wasn't born in that town, then he couldn't have been the Messiah. But Mary and Joseph were from Nazareth. In fact, Jesus was called Jesus of Nazareth in the Bible. So let me ask you this. Is it logical or reasonable to believe that people would be required to return to a city that's an 8 to 10 day walk away, about 100 miles away, for a census? Have any cities that you've ever heard of ever required people to return to their birthplace to take a census? No. Censuses are used to determine who lives in the city now and how many people are there. Is it even reasonable to think that you'd get a small fraction of people to return? What if they were halfway around the world? How would you even announce that you wanted them back there? They didn't have telephones. They didn't have any reliable form of large-scale or long-distance communication. There isn't even evidence that censuses ever worked that way. There's no record or history of Augustus Caesar issuing a census calling people back to their birthplace. It's complete fiction. They just needed that person in that town at that time to make their prophecy work, so they found a way to write it into the texts. All through the New Testament, you can see the authors stretching it and trying to make the story fit Jesus when it just didn't. Now, I'm not claiming that Jesus didn't exist. It's possible there was some guy named Jesus who existed. I don't know. I have no idea, and I'm not going to make any claims about it, but I definitely have doubt. Strong doubt. Now back to what I was saying about Jehovah's Witnesses. Here's the next chapter. It says, "Luke recorded that when Jesus was born, shepherds were living out of doors, minding their flocks. If living out of doors had been their habit year-round, that would not have been noteworthy. However, because Bethlehem is subject to cold rains and snow, flocks were wintered under cover and shepherds would not have been living out of doors. Additionally, Joseph and Mary went to Bethlehem because Caesar Augustus had ordered a census. It is highly unlikely that Caesar would have commanded a people who were resentful of Roman rule to travel to their ancestral cities in the dead of winter." Why is it so confusing to them to think that Caesar would order resentful people to go to their ancestral cities in the dead of winter, but not confusing to think he'd do it at all, regardless of weather? There is absolutely no historical reason to think this is true. There are no records of Augustus Caesar doing that. It's completely ridiculous. Okay, here's the next chapter. Some may argue, did not the astrologers present birthday gifts to Jesus? No, their gift-giving was simply a way of paying their respects to a person of note, a common custom in Bible times. In fact, they did not even come on the night that Jesus was born. Jesus was not a babe in a manger, but many months old and living in a house when they arrived. Hold up, where did they hear that? Did they just make that up on the spot? There's no citation or Bible verse of any kind to go along with that claim. I don't know, it might be true, but I have no way of verifying it. That's what they like to do. They sprinkle the odd citation or Bible verse in here or there, which lends credibility to their propaganda. Then they can slip in complete bullshit, and people believe it to be fact, because they took the time to build their reputation. They've been doing that all along. Now, in reference to the bit about the astrologers giving presents to Jesus, make note of the fact that they call them astrologers. Jehovah's Witnesses universally disrespect astrology, and they think the practice is witchcraft. That's why they used the word. They were trying to give people the distinct impression that the three wise men who visited Jesus were untrustworthy, pagan, and evil, before pointing out that they gave gifts to Jesus when he was born. That's all part of how propaganda works. Ultimately, their real reason for not celebrating holidays is because they want their people to be different. They want them to stand out. They don't want them to take part in fun things with worldly people. I will grant that Christmas specifically isn't actually Jesus' birthday. Spoiler alert. Because we don't know when Jesus' birthday was. We don't even know if he was real. And it's also celebrated on the same day as Saturnalia, the celebration of the sun. But who f***ing cares? As John Cedars said in one of his videos, wearing wedding rings has pagan roots too. But Jehovah's Witnesses still do that. Christmas borrowed some stuff from pagan holidays. Why do they draw the line at holidays but not at wedding rings? Their reasoning really makes no sense, and it all comes down to a mix of two things. The fact that they want to control people, and the fact that they haven't researched things as heavily and in an unbiased way as they like people to think. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Like I said, I'm looking at going full-time with YouTube at some point, and I would greatly appreciate it if you guys supported me through Patreon. YouTube ad revenue does pay some bills, for sure, but it's volatile. Very volatile. I feel like I can't rely on it for shit. One month it'll be plenty to pay my bills, and the next month it won't even cover rent. So I rely on Patreon to give me that sense of stability. Join my Discord and chit-chat with me too. I'm on there a lot. Also, check out my podcast. I'm doing one tonight on my main channel in about 5 hours, so come give it a listen. This is what you'll find if you join my Discord and watch my podcast. That's the style. I talk to guests in the voice chat of the Discord, so come get involved in my community and hang out with me. All links are in the description, including the secret link of the day. Thanks for watching, guys.